Are you on the fence about a track saw but haven't taken the plunge? Well, today we're going to check out what Makita has to offer. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of DP Shop Talk. Now today we're going to be taking a look at the Makita SP6000 track saw. Now I've had this saw for almost 3 years now, so I'll do a review and share with you what I like and what I don't like. For those of you that aren't familiar with track saws, they're a very efficient tool, especially for working with sheet goods, and they're very accurate as well. So I'll go through some of the features that it has and why it works well for me. Now, in addition to reviewing the saw, I'll also share some of the ways that I use my track saw and why I find it's a great tool. So we'll start off with some of the features of this saw and what made me buy the Makita. So the top 3 features that made me go Makita as opposed to some of the competition are the following. The first one being the motor. It's 12 amps, so it's a little bit more powerful than some of the other competition out there, and I found it's worked really well. It's never bogged down on me, and it's always had the power that I need. It also has a soft start feature, so when you start it up, you don't get that startup torque. Now a lot of the other saws have that as well, but it's a very smooth running motor. I've been really happy with the motor. Another feature is the tip lock feature, which is basically a little tab that will slide out and lock into a groove in the track. And what that does is when you have the saw tilted to a bevel cut, it keeps the saw from tipping off the track. A lot of the other saws don't have that. That was one thing that sold me on the Makita. And the other thing is the score feature. Now there's a plunger on the side here that when you push that in, that will set the saw so that it will only cut 2 millimeters in depth. So that will let you make a score cut in the material that you're working with. So if you're working with laminate or a very delicate melamine or something that's prone to chipping and splintering, you can make that score cut so that you get a very clean cut on both sides of the kerf, not just on the side that the track and the splinter guard is on. So I found that really handy, especially for doing laminate work to get that very clean cut that you're looking for. So I'll quickly give you a closer up view of the 2 features that I was just talking about. Now the anti-tip feature is just this little disc that slides out to lock into the track, and I'll show you the way that works. So when you set set the saw on the track, you flick that in, there's a little groove inside the track there, and that keeps the saw from tipping off if you have it beveled over to the right. If you don't have that, then the saw can easily fall off. So I really like that feature. The other thing was the score feature. So you just push this little button in here, that gives you your 2 millimeter depth stop, pull it back, and you can make your full depth cut. So there's a couple knobs here that will adjust the fit on the track, so you can make it slide as freely or as tightly as you want it to, depending on what you prefer. The depth stop is here, so there's a knob that you can just loosen, slide it to whatever depth you want, and then when you plunge the saw, that's where it'll stop. Now it would be nice to see an imperial option for this. This is in metric. I do all of my work in imperial, so I find it's a little bit of a pain to have to convert. I usually keep a little piece of paper with all my common depth settings on it, and that makes the process a little bit easier. Now the bevel adjustment is pretty straightforward. There's a knob front and back, so you just loosen those, and then the saw can tilt. So right now it's set at the 22.5 degree stop. If you turn this knob, it will let it go all the way to 48 degrees, or if you flip this tab back, then it will stop at 45 degrees. So there's a few different options there. Now when you set it back to 90, there's also a feature that when you push these 2 little tabs in, it will let it do a 1 degree back bevel. So it'll tilt 1 degree to the left. So that's a handy feature if you're trying to scribe something in and want just a little bit of a back bevel there. So it has a variable speed knob on the back here, so you can set the speed to suit the material that you're cutting. So if you're cutting a harder material, sometimes you want to dial that back a bit. So that's a nice feature to have the variable speed. Now I find the grips very comfortable. Have a nice rubber mold on there, and it's got a very smooth plunge mechanism too. There's no roughness or anything, and the plunge is very smooth and accurate. Now one thing, the power cord is 8 feet long. I find it to be a little on the shorter side. You pretty much always need to use an extension cord with it. Some of the newer tools that have come out lately have very long cords on them, so it'd be nice to see that integrated into this saw. Now as far as blade changes, it's got a flat end on the motor, so you can set it on the table. There's a little locking mechanism here that will let the pin lock in, so it locks your arbor nut right in the hole, so you can get easy access to that. There's an onboard Allen key, so you can back off your arbor nut, swap the blade out, and you're good to go. So it's really got some great features built into it that really expand its usefulness and its capabilities. Now the blade that comes on this saw, I've been very happy with it. It's not often that you get a good stock blade, but Makita seems to do a really nice job of that. A lot of their saws are supplied with a good quality stock blade. So it's a 48 tooth blade that comes on the saw, a crosscut blade, and I found that it gives very clean cuts in just about any material, whether it's melamine or a veneered plywood. It doesn't give you any splintering, which is very, very nice. Now, one thing to bear in mind about the blade for the Makita is it's 165 millimeters in diameter. Now, most of the saws and most of the aftermarket blades are 160 millimeters. So if you put one of the 160 millimeter blades on this, it will work, but you have to bear in mind that your depth scale is no longer accurate, and you will also sacrifice a little bit of your maximum depth of cut since that blade is slightly smaller diameter. Now, having said that, like I mentioned, the Makita blade is very good, and I've actually bought a second one so I can swap them out for sending out for sharpening. So I've been very happy with the blade and haven't found a need to go to an aftermarket blade, but that is one thing to bear in mind if you're looking at the Makita. Now, the track that came with the Makita saw was something that I had a bit of frustration with and was kind of disappointed with. Now, the trouble that I was having was finding tracks that were straight enough. I ended up getting 2 tracks so that I could join them together with the joining kit to give me one long track for ripping sheet goods with. Now, the problem I was having is getting them so that they were straight. Now, I was being fairly fussy with it. I was looking for something that was in a few thousandths of an inch of being straight, because sometimes I use my track saw for cutting countertop joints, so it needed to be very straight and very accurate. So to make a long story short, I ended up sending a few tracks back and forth with Makita and tried out about 5 or 6 of them until I found 2 that were straight that I was happy with. Now, the problem that I found once I found 2 straight ones is that they tended to rock side to side. The way that the aluminum was cast, it seemed that the center grip strip was a little bit higher than the splinter strip and the other grip strip, so it was making it rock side to side. So what I ended up doing is gluing a strip of laminate to the aluminum and then putting the grip strip, the splinter strip onto that. So that shimmed it down just slightly so that the tracks sit nice and stable. So in the end, I ended up with 2 tracks that I'm happy with, but it was a bit of a process to get there. So that was a little bit disappointing. Now, on the positive side, the grip strips and the splinter strip, they grip really well to whatever surface you're working with, even if you're working with something like melamine that tends to be a little bit more slippery, so that when you set your splinter strip down to your marks, it stays in place, it doesn't move, and it's very rare that you need to use clamps. Sometimes I'll use the Makita clamps underneath if it's a very, very critical cut and I can't afford to have any potential movement at all. So, like I mentioned earlier, the anti-tip feature is really nice. That little tab just fits into the groove right here on the track, and that keeps the saw from tipping off if you are cutting a bevel. So that's one feature that Makita has really done well with that anti-tip feature. So as a cabinet maker, the bulk of the work I do with my Makita track saw is breaking down sheet goods. Now, I use my track saw in conjunction with my MPT or multi-purpose table. That will give me a full-size sacrificial cutting surface that I can set up either in the shop or on site for making all my rip cuts to break down sheet goods. Now, I also have a crosscut jig that integrates into the MPT that allows me to make very quick, accurate, and repeatable crosscuts for cutting all those rips to final length to make my cabinet parts. So if you'd like to find out more about the MPT and how you can build your own, you can click on the eye above and check that out as well. Now, like I mentioned, in addition to cutting sheet goods, I've also used the track saw for doing countertop work, both laminate and solid wood. Now, I've done like a wraparound butcher block countertop. It was solid maple, 1.5 inches thick, and the Makita cut through it with no problems at all. So that really impressed me because that's a thick and dense top to cut through, and it worked very well for that. So to sum it all up, the Makita has really given me the power and precision that I need in the work that I do. Now, it's really critical being able to take that guide track and being able to set it down right on your cut marks and get it cut exactly where you want it and have it be splinter-free and accurate. You don't have to take it back to the table saw and clean up the cut like I used to have to do with the circular saw. The dust collection is also something that works very well. It doesn't make it dustless by any means, but it by far gets the bulk of the dust that it creates. So with having good dust collection and really good accuracy, it makes it an all-around efficient package. So now for the DP tool score. For quality, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I had no issues with the saw itself, but like I mentioned, the track was kind of disappointing. I did get something that I was happy with in the end, but I would rather have not gone through all of that. So for that reason, I'm going to take a couple stars off and give it 3 stars for quality. For performance, I'm going to give it 5 stars. It really works well, giving a splinter-free cut with plenty of power, and I've had no performance issues whatsoever. For design, I'm going to give it 4 stars, just because, like I mentioned, it would be nice if there was an option for an imperial scale on there, so if you're working on imperial, you don't have to convert all the time. And also the power cord, it would be nice to see a little bit longer power cord. Now for value, I'm going to give it 5 stars. It really gives you a lot of performance and accuracy for the price. It's got a lower price point than some of the competition, and so I found that it to be a very good value for what you pay for it. So for an overall DP tool score of 4.25 stars out of 5, I would really recommend this saw if you're in the market. Like I say, it packs in a lot of features and performance for a very reasonable price. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave some comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.